The orphan came from the northwest, a slave, and bought his freedom with iron and blood. Lann's dual swords and spears left a crimson trail on his journey across the lands. His strikes seemed fueled by the gods themselves, flying with endless endurance, purchasing his life with every open gullet. Foes found him impossible to pin down, often stunned by the very blows they would try to deflect. It was as if his frenzy could not be put on hold. Even in the most dire moments, he would rise from the ashes to hack his enemies to pieces. Lann's overwhelming speed and ferocity have crushed many, and many more will fall before he is done. The Shield Maiden rode out of the south with steel and silence, and she carried with her the burdens of the world. Fiona's unassuming sword and shield belied the brutal warrior within. Her approach was measured, her defense precise, her attacks lethal. Her enemies quickly learned that a short blade could cast a broad shadow, a lesson none would get to share. It was a rare mind they faced. Her ability to read the battlefield, to counter and riposte, won her victory after victory against the deadliest creatures in the land. Indeed, it seemed none were able to penetrate her defenses. Should a foe attempt to smash through her guard, she would simply show them her long hammer and remind them of her superiority. For Fiona's was the spirit of the Sentinel, and it would not be broken. The sorceress appeared on our shores from a long-forgotten realm. Evie dazzled foes with staff and scythe, dominating the battlefield with an exotic melange of physical prowess and magical mastery. She tore enemies asunder with bolts of the arcane, or set them alight with a wave of her staff. Though she commanded attention with her grace and youth, any foe foolish enough to underestimate the foreign beauty soon found themselves crushed under the very fabric of reality. She seemed to take particular delight in the more outrageous spells. Should any beast be brazen enough to stand and fight, she would simply conjure a great construct of rubble and iron. A golem, beholden to her every whim and command, filled with an unquenchable desire to protect its master and destroy anything in its path. But her powers did not only rend. Her alchemies granted protection, healing, even life itself. Evie's light shone bright, and the darkness shrank away. The man of impossible size appeared from the uncharted lands, and his was a wrath to behold. Karok trampled his foes, crushing them to paste with a ponderous pillar he tossed about like a twig. Even when his tool was gone, his savagery was not. Big and small alike, they were like dolls to him, and he was not one for play. He was a juggernaut of destruction. He pummeled and he bashed, his fists working like great hammers pounding at the anvil. Karok's strength never failed, for no beast could match it. The ranger lost everything, and his anguish drove him from the woodlands. Kai descended upon his enemies like a storm, overwhelming them with a veritable arsenal of killing tools, custom-made to disorient and destroy. The northeastern winds had equipped him with physical conditioning beyond compare, and he surprised enemies with a martial style that never failed to embarrass. He was a silent executioner, a whisper from the mouth of death itself. Charges, assaults, giant monsters, or packs of beasts. No combatant seemed to break his composure. All were dispatched with cold efficiency, left to rot where they had fallen. For he was a craftsman, and killing was his masterwork. Every foe was simply a puzzle waiting for the right tool, and every tool held a lethal surprise. And when the day came that his tools were not enough, he presented the world with his most devastating invention. His crossgun showered the land in blood, tearing life away with explosive precision. But no amount of bloodshed could quell Kai's roiling heart or ease his pain. The sword dancer blew into town like a frequent ocean breeze, searching for clues to her forgotten past. Vella rollicked across the battlefield with a pair of whirling blades, flaunting her prowess with dizzying displays. She confounded enemies, calling upon an ancient technique to prey on their expectations. The cross dance proved a potent defense against greater foes. She would coil and strike with the sinewy grace of a viper, turning their attacks against them, reveling in their fall. Lesser hordes fell in droves, as few could predict the direction the hurricane of blades would take, and none could stop it once it had begun. She cut, hacked, and sliced her way through the small and the large, the weak and the strong, stopping only to punctuate their last moments with one final coup de grace. She was a siren of blood, using every available advantage to score a symphony of pain. She even went so far as to craft a pair of swirling chain blades to tear apart her foes. Vella's great performance had begun, and the world would tremble. The young blacksmith forged his rage in steel and set out to find the father he lost. Hurk cleaved through all who stood in his way with a great sword made to terrify enemies and butcher them like cattle. He took to violence as a swan takes to water, and his enemies had no recourse but to die. Though his anger made him reckless, there was a method to his aggression. Many great beasts would try to fell him, only to find themselves falling to pieces. His instincts were flawless, and one by one he would lure them into false confidence before chopping them apart with brutal efficiency. Hurk followed his savagery like a siren song, and its only calling was utter detestation. The to the east, and the princess was forced to flee her kingdom. Lynn sliced a path to these lands with her battle glaive, dancing among her foes as the Reaper of Death, punishing their missteps with graceful efficiency. She was swift, precise, hard to catch, trained to strike and disappear. She dispatched even the most dangerous of foes with a flurry of techniques, laying traps and detonating them with an ancient killing blow. Lynn's tireless assault earned her a reputation as the whirling assassin from across the seas. But to her enemies, she would always be feared as the Queen of Destruction. The Silver Witch appeared in a flash of lightning. Arisha's exotic spell sword and magical focus worked as one, driving back the dark with the brilliance of her spirit. None in this world had ever faced her kind. She came at them with a blade wreathed in the very ether itself, calling upon the forces of the arcane to demolish her enemy. She was a blinding streak in the dark, bewildering and deadly. Even the most fearsome creatures were helpless in her presence. She held the final seconds of their lives with a delicate grip, and crushed them without a moment's remorse, for Arisha's heart was tempered in mystic flame, harder than the strongest steel. The mage came like a specter from the void, on a journey to break free of his past. Sylas and his phantom daggers whirled through foes in a performance of pain, drawing forth shards of energy to carve a bloody path at his command. He wielded his pain like a physical force, slashing, smashing, and crushing until none were left to stand against him. Yet for all his bravado, he proved himself a stalwart ally, shielding them with his spells to deflect and confound enemy assaults. Even the mightiest of foes were brought to their knees by his visions of the abyss, for Sylas was a wraith on the battlefield, cold, deadly, and impossible to stop. The maid The vagrant princess glides across the battlefield, dancing between her foes in a hurricane of steel. Misled by her fragile appearance, her enemies fall prey to the brutality of her bastard sword as she crushes them with savage grace. Those foolish enough to cross her become her playthings, and she sends them to oblivion for her own twisted amusement. Unyielding in the face of death, Delia uses her royal training to dismantle her adversaries, be they a lone victim, a legion of mercenaries, or a towering behemoth. A princess by blood, a warrior by choice. The Dragon Knight slices her way through a mass of foes, wielding her enormous blade, the Dragon Spine. Her parries restore her stamina and stoke the flame of her ancestral powers. As she dodges and darts across the battlefield, her dragon spine crackles with blue heat, cutting through flesh like a hot knife. She is the last descendant of the great winged serpents, able to transform, carrying the final torch for all of dragonkind. She is legend made manifest.